Well, hello! A review of a GPS quad today, but before we get into it, a quick reminder to please like or dislike this video, comment down below, don't forget to subscribe and click that little bell icon to find out when I'm uploading footage. And most importantly, do or do not, there is no try, because at least some of those will really help me out. Anyway, what have we got here? This is the E511s foldable drone. Essentially, it's like a bit of a Mavic Air rip-off without a lot of the features in the Mavic Air, but enough to think, this is interesting. So the kind of guys these cater to is people that want to fly. They're not into the race style quads, which are obviously slightly harder to fly than these sort of things that just have position hold and stuff, but they don't want to spend big money on the sort of the Mavics. So this is coming in at £99 or so, just under 100, depending on the config you get. I think that's with the free battery, so it's a fairly reasonably priced one. And on previous sort of toy grade models I've used with GPS, they're pretty reliable. The return to home works, they come back okay, and they hold their position very well. But let's look what's in the box. All wrapped in plastic, and just taking off the instructions, you get this lot. Now, anybody that's owned a DJI, especially the Mavic Air, as I do, will be very familiar with the sort of look you're getting out of this. The control looks like this. It's actually got the same, almost the same moulding. It looks like these things fold out for the phone, but they don't. There's some sort of section that comes out there instead. So yeah, it's got buttons. It's got the same kind of feel. It feels a little bit more plasticky, obviously, for what it is, but it looks quite reasonable. We've got some spare props, a battery charger, screwdriver, prop guards. Won't be using those. In the box there are 2 spare batteries. This is the free battery version, and it's supposed to fly for about 16 minutes per battery. These are 1200 milliamp 2S lipos. You can see there they've got a little balance port here, but they've got some sort of little proprietary connector, so shove them in the same way as you might do on the DJI. And this is the actual little quad itself, all folded up. You notice the arms fold in, and it's also got folding props. So this folds out, similar again to an Air. The Air has little bits that fold from the underneath and all that sort of stuff, but let's get this out and we can show you how it looks. So yeah, all the moulding here is very familiar looking. Obviously it hasn't got a gimbal, but what it does have is this little servo controlled camera that can look straight down or ahead, which is quite nice. And it's got an extra battery in the back here, like so. Very similar, all very familiar. Doesn't seem to be any sort of sensors on it. I don't know what these 2 things are, if they're lamps or something. You've got these little fold down things. I'll put a couple of photos side by side with an actual Mavic Air, because it's very similar in some of the mouldings, but not very familiar in how some of the other stuff works. One thing this doesn't have, I don't think, is actual brushless motors. That they mention there's these 1020 cordless motors, which I think are brushed, but yeah, we'll see how it goes basically. So I'm gonna read the instructions, find out how it works, put some batteries in this, find the app, connect my phone to it, and see how it flies essentially. Now, the last one I had the Bugs something, which is a really nice little GPS control one. Had a really good receiver, which would go like a kilometre, but of course, because we were on Wi-Fi FPV, that would go for about 100 metres and basically stop. I don't know if we're connecting to this and we're using these and we'll get more range, or we'll get, like, you know, 50 to 100 metres or what. I think that'd be the interesting test to see how this does. And then of course we can explore the GPS features, the position hold, playing with this little gimbal camera, the follow me function, all that sort of stuff, to see how it works. Anyway, let's get this charged up, read the instructions, get to the field, and we'll try it out. Join me in a sec. Hello, we're here to try out the little E115s drone, I think it's called. Get it flying, see how it does. It's well, it's a bit cold, it's a little bit breezy, much more breezier than I wanted, but I thought I'd go through the little initialisation you have to do and try taking it up here and see what we can do. So let's get on with it basically.
So here we are in the field, and I'll talk you through some what happened in a mix of voiceover and different bits of footage that I recorded on the day, as there wasn't great sound in the field, and also because I spent almost 15 minutes trying to get this thing to take off. Now this is for several reasons. One being that the manual didn't quite match up, but the most crucial one is that the app simply didn't seem to talk to the quad for quite a lot of its functions, but not all, even more confusingly. So before you can fly, you have to do a compass calibration. This is every time you power on, not just once. Now the manual said that the lights would come on, but it was a bit vague about how it would look. And there are a sequence of lights to look for, but there's also beeps from the controller, although that's not documented. I was having a problem doing this calibration in the field. I'd gone through it at home okay, and then the lights come on solid to indicate you've finished. At the field, they seemed to continue to flash, so I went through sort of multiple times, trying gyro calibrations as well, and rebooting it several times.
First thing we actually have to do is do the compass calibration. You have to do it every time. Press this button here, and we'll see the lights flash. And you turn it around about 3 times. Head down. Turn it around again. Lights come on, and that should be good to go. Oh, hang on, still flashing. What's that mean?
I'd got this sorted, but then I still had issues taking off, and basically I couldn't get the props to start. And this is what really took the bulk of that 15 minutes. And this is where I was relying on the app to work as I expected it to. The quad described itself as locked, so I pressed the unlock button. It asked me to confirm it, but stayed locked. I tried the takeoff button where it should have just launched into the air, but this also didn't do anything. And it was only because there was a stick command for gyro calibrations where you move both sticks to lower right. I decided to try some sort of old school stick combos, see if there was one to arm the quad, and there was. Pull both sticks down and away from each other, and the prop started spinning up, so that's obviously the unlock. Of course, this wasn't mentioned at all in the manual.
Actually in the air, after what was a bit of a struggle, I have to admit. So, how's it doing at holding position? Not too bad given the amount of wind actually. Get a picture of myself. There we go. Who can tell? Yes, I think it's recording. That's me. Look at that, we can move the camera down, so I should be able to do an overhead shot. We're going like this. Wowzers.
So I was able to take off and have a fly around. It was very windy and gusting, so the quad was being bounced around quite a lot, but to give it its due, the GPS did exactly what it should have done and held its position and height fairly well. You could see it drift off a bit, but basically come back to where it should have been. Now I've got several recordings here. I've got a screen recording of my phone so you can see what I saw. The Wi-Fi FPV, as we expected, is a bit choppy and certainly wasn't helped by the wind. The quad has its own micro SD card slot, so I have direct footage from the quad. I took a look at the stats on this footage, and the frame rate is 25 frames per second with a data rate of 8 megabits per second. Now I actually like the fact that the camera has a decent wide angle. Often these things have this really narrow angle and everything zoomed in, so this is actually quite nice. There's an awful lot of jello in this footage, you can see there. Now I'll give this the benefit of the doubt and say that this was being negatively affected by the wind, but I would say don't expect anything amazing even on a calm day. You'll notice that, well, it can't really handle that bright area of the sun where it goes all dark. And the file sizes it records are very weird. I took a look on the SD card and I only recorded one piece of footage on the day. And on this case you could actually use the app for this and it worked. And I got the recording split into files of around 100 megabytes or 1 minute 40 seconds sections, which seems weirdly small. So FPV works in the regular sort of way for this type of quad. The quad itself creates a wireless network access point. You join it with your phone and then you run the app. This means that the range is normally fairly limited. I did a range test and it started getting a bit scrappy at around 80 meters. We got further than that and beyond 100 meters, but then the screen locked up. This was kind of expected. What wasn't is that the screen didn't come back to life again until I was almost home.
Now, according to this, it is 60 meters away from me. Picture's a little bit scrappy. Yeah, I let it go upright about 10 minutes ago. It's still sat there. It is not what you call real time, but it is 150 meters away, and I'm still getting a pitch I could live with, which is not so bad, is it? How much further will it go? I have to be kind of careful that this doesn't lock up and I haven't noticed and I end up going into a tree, so I'm having a look as well. That's kind of seems to have locked up there. Yeah, I got nothing. I can see it in the distance. It was about 184 when it kind of lost the image. See if it comes back. Still got nothing. I can see my quad. Right, here's the quad here, and my still image is still of what was happening in that field. Oh, here it is, finally updated.
So I tried RTH and I found that the RTH button on the app simply did nothing. There's a land now button which told me it was doing something but nothing happened, and then there's the proper RTH, so come home and land button, and that does nothing at all. There's also a land button on the controller, and that will just land wherever you are. So if you're way out in the field, it will just land straight back down. So I ended up referring back to the manual to find out there was a stick command for RTH, which is basically you press one of the sticks down. This works fine, but again, it would be better if the app actually worked like it should do.
Turn as a click for return. Let's try it. Okay, if we go click. Okay. Going upwards, sort of turning. I was thinking about going to the right place. Oh, looks like it doesn't want to actually land though. Oh no, it's coming down. Okay, so that kind of works.
One thing that was also on the controller but I couldn't seem to get working was to disengage the GPS mode. I pressed the button, but the quad, no matter what I did, held its position against the wind and held its position looking at the GPS coordinates. The reason I wanted to fly without it is to try and stop the quad fighting actively against the wind, making things a bit smoother. And obviously when I was going along and then let go, I wanted it to drift on nicely, but it just didn't work. I looked at the other functions on the app, and there was a follow me and a circle function and a waypoint function. So after a couple of goes, I got the follow me function working, and it actually seemed okay. Basically, it tracks the GPS position on your phone, and it was able to follow me around. Obviously, there's no sensors here, so you do need to be careful that when you're doing this, you're in an open area. It won't It won't know there's trees or anything in the way, it will just hit them, so watch out for that. The other functions though, I wasn't having much luck with. The orbit function, which is supposed to fly around you in a circle, managed to make the quad do a 360 in its single position it had, but I couldn't seem to change any of the parameters here to get it to work. And the nav function just refused to do anything. It looked like it had drawn a tiny circle around itself and wasn't allowing me to extend that circle as a sort of geofence, and so I couldn't select any waypoints outside that area, and because it was so small I couldn't select any inside the area. It was just, well, it just looked broken. I mean, to be fair, it's kind of a function I wouldn't necessarily imagine using, but you know, it was there and it should work. So I did 2 of the lipos on this test, and I got between about 10 and 12 minutes and landed with the indicator at about 20-25% battery. At this point it was flashing to say it was low battery, wanted to come down, so this is a little bit less than the sort of figures it reckoned, but you can thrash it about a little bit and get a reasonable 10 minutes, I think.
Well, what to say about this sort of thing? Bit of a shame, really. I mean, it does its functions okay. It works as a very simple to fly quad. This controller's okay, a bit plasticky, but the sticks work fine. It holds its GPS position nicely. It comes home once you've figured it out. But it's all about this woeful app. And I was suspicious from the start, because as soon as I started the app up, I noticed it was just this generic screen. There was no Eachine branding or anything about this quad in particular. I get the feeling there's probably an off-the-shelf Wi-Fi module that goes into this thing, and the app kind of comes with it, and they haven't done the things they need to do to make the app hook up to the rest of the controls. So sometimes the app works, starting and stopping the recording. Other times, like return to home, that doesn't work, and then you have to rely on this. Of course, that's not documented in this manual, which isn't very well explained on anything. So you've got this situation here where you're trying to produce this low-cost, simple GPS-style drone that looks a bit like a Mavic. I don't know whether it's to get people to say, hey, well, that's probably as good, if they don't know what they're talking about. But, I mean, ignoring that, it folds up nice and small. It will fly around okay. I mean, you've seen the quality of the camera. It was a windy day, but you can't expect anything good from that. Wi-Fi FPV is not great, but it would still, I think, fill that hole. People who are sort of, you know, the sort of my first quad, getting into it, don't want to spend money, just want to dip their toe in the water. But when the app is that bad and the manual does nothing to support it, you're driving people away again. When you're talking about a beginner quad like this, it needs to be very simple. It needs to be very straightforward, and the app needs to really help you. It's like the app actively works against you and tries to screw you up, which is a shame, because if the app was good, I would say, you know, this is a pretty good little starter quad. The FPV's not great, but you know, you can get out there and you can learn a little bit about flying. As it is, I have to say, no, don't buy this, because the app is that bad that it's not worth it. It just actively works against you. It doesn't fulfill what it's trying to do. It was over a year ago I reviewed the MGX Bugs 2, which is, it's not a folding quad, it's a bit bigger. It had a very good GPS implementation. It didn't have some of the fancy features like follow me and stuff, but the difference is it had a really nice controller with labelled buttons saying this is return to home, this is GPS mode, this is attitude mode, whatever it was. And the app, which was all branded bugs and stuff, worked brilliantly, and it just did what you thought it would. And I put a little 5.8 Cameron VTX on there and flew it around, because the transmitter was good enough to get really decent range to get past that Wi-Fi problem. I mentioned this one because, yeah, that's an alternative to this sort of thing, but I haven't looked at a similar toy grade style GPS quad since that time. There might be better ones on the market. You'd hope so. I mean, all it needs is a decent app and it would be okay. But for now, don't buy this one, because it's not good enough. The app needs to be sorted. I don't know if they can improve that app, or they need to mess with the firmware on here to make the app talk to it. But right now, no, forget it, sadly. This came from Banggood. Thanks, Banggood, for sending it to me. And of course, there's links down below if you want to check it out. But I'd advise you look for something else. If you see something and you think, hey, I was interested in this one that does a similar function, let me know what it is and I'll see if I can get hold of it. But for now, I hope the video was useful, and I will catch you next one. See you later.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.